I'd like to call to order the Monday, October 4th meeting of the City of Monona City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Goforth.
Present.
Alder Groupie.
Here.
Alder Moore.
Here.
Alder Wood.
Here.
Alder Core.
Here.
Alder Thomas.
Here.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If anyone would like to make a statement who hasn't filled out one of these forms, which are available on the table there, if you could do that and hand it in to Alder Goforth, who will pass it down. Let's see, the next item is approval of minutes from the September 20th meeting.
So move.
I'll second.
Any corrections or additions? I had one correction for Joan about the Ann Ahern run, which I've already sent to her. If there's nothing else, all in favor say aye.
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 Minutes are approved. We have several appearances tonight, and I have two proclamations to start. First of all, we have a proclamation for Native American Heritage Month. Whereas Indigenous Peoples Day honors the invaluable contributions of all Native Americans and commemorates their shared history and culture, and whereas the territory where the City of Monona is today was traditionally occupied by the Ho-Chunk Nation since time immemorial, and whereas Monona recognizes the fact that the city was built on the homelands and villages of Indigenous peoples of the region without whom the building of this city would not be possible, and whereas the city recognizes the historical sacrifices of Indigenous peoples and greatly values the social, economic, and cultural contributions they make to our community, and whereas Indigenous Peoples Day was first proposed in 1977 by the International Conference on Discrimination Against the Indigenous Population in the Americas, a delegation sponsored by First Nations leaders in the United States. And whereas the City of Monona honors our country's Indigenous roots and history and seeks with this celebration to bring greater understanding to the citizens of Monona regarding Indigenous cultures and the enormous contributions they have made and continue to make to our nation and the City of Monona, now therefore be it resolved that I, Mary Kay O'Connor, Mayor of the City of Monona, Wisconsin, do hereby proclaim the second Monday in October to be Indigenous Peoples Day in Monona, and urge our citizens to celebrate and value the Indigenous people of Monona, participate in celebrations and activities, encourage the teaching of their people's history, encourage businesses, organizations, and public instructions to recognize this day, and promote the well-being and growth of Monona's American Indian community. Signed in the City of Monona, Dane County, Wisconsin, this 4th day of October 2021. Mary Kay O'Connor, Mayor. And I think there is a flag raising planned of the Ho-Chunk flag on in the morning of October 11th, which I unfortunately will not be able to come to, but is it at 11, Brian?
Yeah, we're looking at 11 a.m. for that.
In the parking lot at City Hall. So please attend if you get a chance. Then our second proclamation, whereas the Monona Police Department's Canine Maya is retiring after 11 years of service, and whereas Maya is a female black Labrador mix with extensive training in drug detection and tracking, she is able to detect marijuana, cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine, and whereas Maya and her handler, Sergeant Adam Knockreiner, have worked primarily in Monona, but have also assisted other agencies outside of city limits, earning them a reputation throughout the greater Madison area as a valuable team known for their impeccable tracking skills. And whereas Maya and Sergeant Knockreiner have contributed a great deal to the community, offering special programs for children to meet a police officer in a positive educational environment, marching in the annual Memorial Day Parade, and displaying their skills every year at the city's National Night Out event. Whereas Sergeant Knockreiner was recently awarded the State of Wisconsin's Meritorious Tracking Award, and he and Maya will receive the award at a formal ceremony next month. And whereas Maya will enjoy her retirement as a member of Sergeant Knockreiner's family while her successor begins training in January. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor Mary Kay O'Connor, on behalf of the Common Council of the City of Monona, hereby recognize Monona Police Canine Maya on her retirement after 11 years of valuable service to the Monona community. Be it further resolved that we recognize Sergeant Adam Knockreiner for undertaking the responsibility as Monona's first canine officer and thank him for sharing his home with Maya for the last 11 years and now in her retirement. Signed in the city of Monona, Dane County, Wisconsin, this 4th day of October 2021. Mary Kay O'Connor, Mayor. Yeah.
I just want to thank everybody. We came across 12 years ago when we first started fundraising, when we were ready for this program, and they all got approved. And it's been a fun 11 years out of my 16 years here. It's going to be a little different coming to work without Maya barking at everybody going down the street and whatnot. But I was blessed to get a good partner, and I appreciate everybody's support. So.
She's obviously.
You're welcome. We've heard lots of good things about her.
Maya breaks the city as she What a goober.
All right, moving on. We have 4 or 5 appearances and an email, which Brian will read later. First would be Mike Mullmans. Mike, if you'd like to come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Wants to speak on the Winnetka Road sidewalk.
First of all, thanks a lot. Mike Mullmans, 5800 Winnetka Road. First, thank you for the opportunity to speak and provide comment on the capital budget. I appreciate all of your work and this discussion on my driveway, along with Dave as we share the driveway. Thanks for all coming out, and thank you, Nancy, for attempting to in the next couple of weeks. I know your work is often difficult and often not appreciated, so I appreciate you all listening and helping us out. First of all, I favor option 1 on the a letter that was sent out last week. Sidewalks are a very expensive solution in search of a problem, I think. Data from the Monona Police Department, requested by citizens and delivered to us last Friday by Alder Goforth, shows no safety concerns on the south end of Winnetka. There have been no accidents year to date, and in the last 5 years, there have been only 5 accidents with 1 pedestrian injury. In Monona as a whole, over the same 5-year time frame, there have been 1,900 accidents. So, again, 5 accidents in 5 years between Bridge and Maywood Road is comparatively a small number when you look at the city as a whole, especially considering the high rate of speed that we all acknowledge occurs on Winnetka Road. So the Public Works letter noted 3 options that you're considering now with the capital budget. And what was communicated was a notice for the October 21st public information meeting to tell us what you already decided and approved at City Council on the 18th. Being this is the first reading, the second reading will be in 2 weeks, and then we're having a public information meeting after the fact. So today's meeting and today's discussion of the capital budget were not mentioned, but today with the first read is when City Council traditionally hears public input, like ours tonight, and luckily we were informed of this through Alder Thomas and Alder Goforth to get involved today. So the October 21st meeting is going to be a public information session about what you've already decided and discuss the design. So it's a bit after the fact, unless we were here tonight, luckily, to discuss it. So I hope I have this next part right. My recollection of TIF funding is a little fuzzy, but Alder Wood and Alder Thomas attempted to help me with this, as well as a conversation with George Whiteburn. So we've begun to hear that the city will pay for most or all of the sidewalk with TIF funds left over from the Riverwood project, or Riverfront project. So I know it's paid back with the increment gained, but up front, it's not just Monona funds, it's statewide taxes, I believe. So it really does impact the whole state, and I wonder if other communities do the same thing of financing items or elements outside of a TIF district with TIF funds. That needs to be explained. So I was in favor of the San Domino purchase because I heard that purchasing future projects would not be impacted by that borrowing, but now I wonder because we're using a mechanism I don't think we've ever used before in financing infrastructure like sidewalks, at least in my recollection. And I wonder if a cheaper version or a cheaper alternative like speed humps would be a better alternative given the cost, and we're not putting on the tax roll. So I wonder if we do have the funding or how we're approaching this because we're using TIF. The primary area of why I'm here is the area in front of my home between Owen Road and Mulgara Road. This is where the street will be moved 3 feet to the west, to the lakeside, to add a sidewalk in front of the retaining wall on the east side on my property and that of other east side residents. So that means we'll have a sidewalk, bike lane, road, another bike lane between the two walls. Then you likely also need a retaining wall on my neighbor's property, Dave Woody's property at 5802 Winco Road, because of the slope of his yard. So many trees on that property, and also at 5900 and 6008, will be sacrificed to, in addition to dozens more between Bridge and Maywood because of the new sidewalk. So then, between my home and 5802 Winco Road and our shared driveway, and the homes across the street at 5711 and 5801, there'll be two walls, no grass, no terrace, and we'll have to somehow deal with our mailboxes, garbage and recycling containers, leaves in the spring and fall, and our brush. And it's all pavement and walls. There's no room for anything else. But the city says it will help with snow and leaves. I'm not sure about that. In 2030 or 2040, will future councils and future staff remember this agreement to take care of my leaves and take care of my snow? And I don't know if you realize how much leaves are in this neighborhood. I did some rough calculations, and for 3 weekends in October and November, I put out about 500 cubic feet of leaves each weekend. It's 60 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet for 3 weekends at least. I was trying to be conservative in my estimate. So over the course of the fall, that's 1,500 cubic feet of leaves coming out of my yard, and I have no place to put them. It's just sidewalk, bike lane, retaining wall. Now I put in the bike lane, and that's approved or allowed, I should say. I wouldn't say it's approved, but allowed by the city. And because of the retaining wall, it pretty much stays there and hugs the retaining wall. It doesn't go into the street. But with the sidewalk and bike lane and the retaining wall being 4 or 5 feet away, it's all going to blow. It's going to go into the street, and from the opposite side of the street as well, where there'll be leaves, I think, all over the street, creating a real safety hazard. So I'm wondering how that will be taken care of by the city if they're going to take care of my leaves. Again, for an entire month, basically, of myself and then my neighbors. Will the city come into my yard and remove them? Since I have no place to put them, it's going to be a real problem. And then besides that, the mailboxes, the garbage, recycling containers, brush, all of that is a major problem. So again, I ask for option 1, the safer, affordable option that will actually reduce speed and increase safety by slowing down traffic. The alternative will likely increase accidents because right now, frankly, they can't get much lower than they are. 5 in 5 years is more than I think we can expect on a road with the volume of Winco Road. So the data simply does not support sidewalks on the south end of Winco, and I think the city council shouldn't support them either. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I have a
Thanks for all
question.
you do.
Mike, I have a question.
Yes.
What do you do with your leaves now?
I put them out 3 weekends in August, October, November, and I try to put them out on Sundays so that they're not out the entire weekend.
In the road.
In the road and the bike
The
lane.
bike lane, yeah. Okay.
And it's about 60 feet worth, 3 different weekends.
Good.
And I think the city is pretty good about picking them up as soon as they can during that week. But sometimes it snowed, and they stay there quite a long time until the city can get to them.
Good. Thank you.
So,
Thank you. Next
Thanks a
up
lot.
is David Whitty.
Hi, my name is David Whitty. I live at 5802 Winnequa Road. My wife and my 3 daughters, we moved in April of 2020. I first really want to thank each of the members of the City Council, as well as the mayor, for being very responsive to my emails, as well as for setting aside time to meet with myself, Mike, and others on our street. We know that you're very busy, and we do appreciate the time. Mike wrote a very comprehensive letter and shared a lot of the same points that Mike and I talk about in our shared driveway as we run into each other, or in the winter we plow our shared driveway together. But I also am in favor of option 1 of the Public Works letter that was dated on September 29th. I think Mike says it very well in his letter, that sidewalks are a very expensive solution in search of a problem. And from the beginning of my letter that I sent in July, I asked for data. I asked for data to say why. Why the sidewalk? And I got responses about the Bike and Pedestrian Committee that met in 2017 or 18 and the information that came out of there. But I also didn't live in Monona at that time, and I understand I wasn't involved. I take fault on that, and I did my research on the website and the minutes from that committee. But I still didn't see the data to support a sidewalk from Bridge to Schluter Road on South Winnequa. It wasn't until this past Friday where we actually got specific data regarding accident information that said in the last 5 years there had been 1 accident between a bike or between a car and a pedestrian. Now, I don't want that to happen, but as Mike stated, we have thousands of accidents that occur, or 1,900 he said, in the previous 5 years throughout the city. But we're going to install sidewalks that will truly destroy the beauty of Winnequa Road when there isn't the data to support the need for it. As I said in my letter to you all, I have 3 daughters. They're not high school or college age. They're 7th grade, 6th grade, and 3rd grade. And as I said in my letter, my 3rd grade daughter has Down syndrome. I am concerned about the speed and the safety of Winnequa Road. But I also am not going to tell you that I think putting in a sidewalk is going to keep my 3 daughters safe or anyone else safe on that street. Accidents take 1 person and 1 car, and that can be anywhere in the city of Monona. And installing sidewalks on South Winnequa Road, although you may believe you're making it safer, you're giving everyone a false assumption or a false belief that it actually is safer when it's not. Because the engineer told us at the city meeting that the things that will be done to create the sidewalks will actually make Winnequa faster, will actually increase the speed of the cars that go through the south to the north. That is what the engineer told us. We were surprised. It was mostly east side West Winnequa Road residents at that meeting. From what I understand before, it was mostly west side Winnequa residents that came to these meetings when it was first brought up. How that has shifted, I wonder why. But I'm glad to see some of my west side Winnequa residents here tonight, because they care about the beauty and the character of Winnequa Road. And putting in sidewalks will truly destroy that beauty. I walk up and down Winnequa, and I drive slowly down Winnequa. partly because I live on this street and I want to make sure it's a safe street for not just my family, but others. But I also take the time to look at the beauty of the street. And I take the time to look at the impact of everybody's home that would be impacted by this sidewalk after I learned about it. Going in 6 to 10 feet on everyone's property to put in a sidewalk that isn't really necessary when we haven't tried other things. One of the things that has really been frustrating to me as a citizen, and again, I appreciate all of your time, but we as citizens who have met with you and talked with others have brought up different ideas. How about we try a one-way street for 2 or 3 weeks and see how that changes? And I get, oh no, that's not going to work. Where are the cars going to go? They're not going to be able to work on Nichols. They're not going to work on Dean. How are we going to funnel them? There's been no traffic study to say that's not going to work. We never had a traffic study to say a one-way street on Winnequa will not work. But we're not willing to look into that and see. Because you know what? It may work. It may be the best thing, or it may not. But we should take the time to look into that. We've talked about bike boulevards. But people say, no, we don't want to do bike boulevards. We don't want the street to be so bike focused. I was driving here tonight, and 2 people were walking on the east side of the street with flashing lights and vests on. I could easily see them. However, when I made my stop at Winnequa and Maywood, luckily I knew a bike was behind me because he flew straight through the stop sign, and I could have easily taken a right turn and clipped him, and it would have been my mistake because I'm the driver. But luckily I knew to wait because he flew straight by. That could be a good example of why we might want to look into a bike boulevard. But again, we get the no, let's not do that. We got the sidewalk idea. How about a true traffic study of all of Monona, not just Winnequa? We brought this information to Maywood, the residents on Maywood Road, to let them know that this may be coming down your street too. None of them knew it was coming. But I've been told, well, that's part because it was in the bike and pedestrian minutes from 3 years ago when there was a pandemic in between those 3 years. How many people do you think have actually looked at those minutes in the last 3 years? Not many, because not many knew about it. But now I find out, talking to a council person, that road, the sidewalks on Maywood to get to Winnequa School, they're not going to occur until the road is needed to be updated. So now we're going to build potentially a sidewalk from Bridge up to Schluter on Winnequa Road without it connecting on Maywood Road right away until Maywood Road breaks down enough so that it has to be resurfaced. So we have a sidewalk to nowhere. And to me, that just doesn't make sense. I also questioned the sidewalk and the funding of it. I think that using TIF money is, some would say, strategic. I would say unethical. We couldn't make it. We couldn't pay for it with the money we have in our capital budget. So strategically, we looked for other ways. Ethically, I think it's not the way to go. I would hope other cities in our state wouldn't do this, and I hope Monona wouldn't do this either. I will conclude shortly, I promise. A couple of other things that I think are highly overlooked as little issues, but are big issues that will not only, in my last email, come back to not only haunt the residents of Winnequa on East Side, but also I think the city. Mailbox relocation. It's discussed, but there's no answer to it. But we're just going to still move ahead and maybe vote for sidewalks without having that answered. And then I think we're making the sidewalks on east side of Winnequa so people don't have to cross Winnequa Street or road. They can stay on the east side to be safe. But that means I have to cross Winnequa Road at least once, if not twice, a day to get my mail, or send my children across the street once or twice a day, every day, except for on Sundays, to get my mail. So it's my safety isn't the biggest deal, but let's make sure that the people on Pheasant Hill or another street are safe when they walk and make their way to the lake. I don't buy that argument about why it should be on the east side versus the west side. As Mike said, I think snow removal is a big issue. I would like an MOU from the city stating that the city will be removing the snow, not just for 2, 3, or 4 years, but for its entirety. Leaf removal is huge. Garbage and recycling. We talked to the city council members that came out. We talked about utility poles, shared driveway, street parking. We talked about it, but there aren't answers to it. So it's very difficult for me to understand how the city may be able to move forward on voting on the 18th on that we may have sidewalks without these important questions answered. And then the last one about which really, I guess, gets me is the lack of transparency. And I don't mean this towards anyone specifically, but I think that the letter that I stated that first went out on the meeting, it was very poorly written, would be nicely said, or adding the sidewalk into the update of South Winnequa Road. That was, again, I think an unethical approach to inform the people who live on Winnequa. Striping the road on Winnequa is nothing similar to putting in a sidewalk. Yet those were in the paragraph were by commas. And now we're in that same spot. I thank you for your time, and I would just ask that the beauty and land that we have at San Damiano, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I fully support that. It is something that I know my family will use and my children will use in the future. I will hope that you will think about your legacy on this decision regarding the destruction of Winnequa Road. It is the beginning of Monona when you drive in and you see the beauty, and it is how you can exit Winnequa Road to see the beauty. Maybe it'll just be one way, and that's okay with me as well. But I think that we've got to look at 100-year-old trees, multiple 100-year-old trees that will be cut down to put in a sidewalk that there really is truly not a need for. So again, thank you for your time, thank you for your work, and I appreciate your patience in my long-winded speech to you tonight.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thanks.
Next up, David Lehrer.
Thank you. I share the concerns of my East Side neighbors with regard to snow removal and brush removal. But what I think about is the information meeting we had back in July, and the sentiment clearly of the crowd was not in favor of sidewalks. It was slowing down the speed of traffic. What I heard was people don't mind sharing the space. It's part of what Monona's about. Just slow down the traffic. And in prior meetings on this topic, it's very clear that public sentiment was, don't cut down a bunch of trees. The beauty of the trees, again, the Monona vibe that is those trees. But beyond that, we cut down the trees, we've got wider sight lines, traffic's going to speed up. And I don't think anybody can argue that. And if we look at this Monona citizen survey, there was no consensus, or there was a lack of interest in sidewalks. It's 27th out of 31 or something like. I don't see where the mandate. Where is the mandate for sidewalks coming from? And I'm concerned about the change in the schedule and the public information meeting coming after the capital budget is considered and approved. I don't think that's the right order. And as the the person that repaired the historic wall from the ground up adjacent to my property over a course of a couple of years ago, you're going to degrade that wall the whole way down. There's no way you can excavate for a new curb moved over as the plans call for without picking up the wall and moving it and then reinstalling it. You know, who's ever installing the curb is going to have to dig back. It's just not, and I don't know if Strand has looked that far, but the only way you're going to maintain those walls, if you want to move the curb that close with the excavation that would be required, you have to pick up those walls, move them, put them back down. Anyway, thanks for your time.
Thank you. And Kurt and Nicole Stute of 6003 Winco Road would like to register against the South Winco Road capital budget. Okay, now Brian, did you have a letter you're going to read?
Yes, thank you. This was an email that I received asking it to be read into the record. It's from Sue Carr at 4209 Winco Road. As you may know, I've spent some time in the last few months working on setting up a group in Monona ARC, which is a neighborhood-based, locally focused series of study circles for folks to get together and discuss the issues surrounding racism, diversity, inclusion, and the city we love. Our circle participants have each taken their knowledge in a different direction, the one that interests them, and we continue to grow and learn together. I've met some great people who are bravely facing the part they play in a system based on white supremacy. For us, ARC comes from two things: anti-racism circles and three commitments we are making as citizens of Monona: to build awareness within Monona around the issues of racial justice, to build relationships among neighbors to grow a community of anti-racist practice, and to commit to concrete actions and behaviors that make Monona more inclusive. For me, given the conversation at the last City Council meeting, the process of appointments to city committees is one that I'm interested in. I think that Monona has a real opportunity here to educate, advertise, and recruit a deep, diverse, and interesting group of folks to serve our city. As was stated in the last City Council meeting, there's a perception of a certain group of people who run the city, and the perception is that it is exclusionary. I have long been concerned that ordinary citizens of Monona don't know how to get involved or do not feel welcomed into the processes. Much of my work with ARC has been to link Monona citizens to information, reports, contracts, events, and budgets that are public documents and important for them to be aware of. One of the documents that we examined is the report you commissioned from Nehemiah entitled Baseline Assessment of Racial Equity in the City of Monona. Particularly, the passage of interest was, however, even with robust policy, filling committee vacancies will inevitably result in recruitment from social networks of those who are currently serving on committees, city leadership, and staff, which often exclude people of color for applying or even becoming aware of the vacancy. This phenomenon is not unique to the city of Monona, but is a consequence of the segregated nature of community social structures. We recommend that the city also develop an intentional approach to widely announcing committee vacancies and work with community partners to ensure residents of color have the opportunity to apply and be appointed. Therefore, I am here tonight, in written form, to encourage you to officially adopt the March 17, 2018 proposal for the committee commission appointments process as a policy, solidifying the important input of all stakeholders on a committee and allowing for appointments to be collaborative decisions with strong focus on diversity. That diversity could be racial, economic, age, length of time in Monona, etc. Nearly half of our citizens are renters in Monona. Do we think renters are adequately represented on our committees in our city? In addition, I would encourage you to adopt some standard timelines so that folks know once a seat in a committee has officially opened up, there's a clear process of a timeline until the appointment is made. 2, actively recruit deep and wide for each opening on committees. I'm linking here 2 flyers, one from the City of Middleton and one from the City of Madison, which are obvious efforts to recruit new, different, and diverse voices. I encourage us to do the same and publicly post committee openings on all city websites, Facebook pages, and the newsletter, etc., etc. Consider this guide from the City of Madison a great tool to work towards emphasizing diversity and equity in our city committees and for encouraging public participation in general. In summary, I have grown and learned about how cities can move forward to becoming more welcoming, more diverse, and more equitable, as it has become clear to me that Monona can and must do better. We can reach out to new people who none of us know, and bring them in. We can trust that they will have their own interest in new perspectives and will move Monona in a direction that reflects the strengths of our total community. I'm happy to talk to any of you individually about ARC or connect you with another of the 6 Monona citizens who make up our leadership team. And tonight I urge you to take steps forward, not back.
Thank you. Let's see, moving on. There is no public hearing. There is no consent agenda. There is no unfinished business. Moving on to new business. Item 2A, Consideration of Resolution 21-10-2515, acceptance of FEMA Assistance to Firefighters grant put forth by Fire Chief McMullen and the Public Safety Committee, and this is started for immediate action.
Move to suspend the rules and take this item out of order.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Move approval.
I'll second.
Chief?
Good evening. First of all, I want to say thank you. Myself, I'm not a big fan of taking things out of order and not having two readings. But even though most of this grant is federal money, I'm also trying to manage a price increase that gets us more value for the money that they've been willing to give us. So this grant program is through the Federal Emergency Management Agency to replace all of our breathing apparatus. We were awarded $202,000 in change with a city match of a little over $10,000. So again, the reason I asked for it to be voted on tonight is we're trying to manage a price increase that we know is coming in the next couple of weeks.
Anyone have any questions for the chief? I think the fact that he got this grant is terrific. I know we've applied for it several times in the past and with no luck, so this is great. Anyone else? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, item 2B, consideration of Resolution 21-10-2516, clarification of Police Department policy review procedures put forth by Alder Thomas and the Public Safety Committee. Chief, would you like to just address this?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, this is in an effort to clarify a previous resolution that the Council made last year, which in essence I don't think was the intended purpose. However, sort of bound the police department to have all of its policies and related procedures to be reviewed and approved by council. And so this offers a bit more leeway in focusing on those specific policies that I think the public expects this council to weigh in on. Of course, that is not to say, as was mentioned by a member in the previous meeting, that this is all limited. And what I mean by that is that, of course, there will be opportunities for the public who have concerns or want certain policies to be brought up by or reviewed by council. That ability is still there. However, this specifies the specific policies in which the council will continue to review. All others, the PD and the chief, me, I will have opportunity to amend or review internally. I will obviously do so in consultation with folks. I obviously keep my open door policy open as it's been since June 1st and continue to receive public input from folks reaching out to me or by presenting any questions, inquiries, or asking and soliciting that input from representative groups such as the Public Safety Committee. So this offers to provide some clarification in determining that the following policies will be reviewed: the citizen complaint policy, the vehicle pursuit policy, use of force policy, operation of emergency vehicle policy, mobile AV recording policy, and if there is a future policy on this, rendering medical aid.
Any questions or comments? Alder Moore.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, since I was not here at the last meeting and was unable to attend the public safety meeting, that I'm fully in support of this. I know that when we reviewed some policies last year, one of the things that former chief readily admitted was that our SOP and our procedure manuals were a bit of a mess, and that's his quote. I'm not putting words in his mouth. Simply because we haven't had the time or the personnel to devote to kind of organizing and the policies. So it's not, I think, not just about rewriting policy as much as organizing it in a way that makes the training and execution easier for our team. And I surely don't want to go through 400 policies here at the council level. So I appreciate you highlighting those that are important, particularly for the public, and support this.
Anyone else? Alder, go for it.
Chief, I wanted to confirm that the canine policy will be reviewed is that under use of force?
The canine policy is a separate policy,
Okay.
so if you, suppose right now, if you'd like to offer that, it's your prerogative. but-
Yes, someone did mention that to me and said they had some concerns about it. How are you feeling about the canine policy right now, as it is?
I don't think it, I'm always open for, in the
Okay.
spirit of continuous improvement and being better, I'm always open for a further review and discussion. As it stands right now, I think it's a pretty solid policy. I mean, it's policy that's in place for a canine program in which doesn't even apply because our current canine isn't an apprehension dog. But there's still policy language in there about apprehension.
Okay. Maybe it's something we could add prior to us acquiring the new dog. I think that would be something of interest, I think, because the new dog is going to be trained slightly differently, correct?
Correct. It'll be a patrol dog, which will have apprehension abilities.
Okay.
So I would respectfully recommend that you consider doing that now because we're
Okay.
acquiring the dog in the near future here.
Okay. All right. I would like to make a friendly amendment, if I could, on that to add the canine policy review.
Okay.
And then I just wanted to mention on the pursuit policy, I don't know if you had a chance to watch the older public safety meetings, but I did reach out to Jonathan Ferris. He was the director and founder of Pursuit for Change, and he came in and was very generous with our time and sat through that entire meeting guiding that. So I just wanted to make sure you knew about that, and if you needed to reach out to him, he is a fantastic advocate for police and for people. So he lives in Verona, and I know he would be open to chatting with you.
Thank you. I've not had the opportunity to review
Okay.
previous
Yeah.
PC meetings, but
In
I
your
am
off
aware.
time?
No. I am aware that a lot of work has been done with that policy, and there's more changes that I look to make here in the near future.
He's a great resource.
Anyone else? Okay, then we will consider this at the next meeting, and City Administrator Gatto will add the canine policy to the list of policies before that time, so. All right, next move on to consideration of Resolution 21-10-2514, approving the 2022-2026 capital improvements program and 2022 capital borrowing put forth by the mayor. Before we start this, I just want to make sure people know we are not voting on the budget tonight. We are not voting on any of these proposed amendments tonight. This is strictly to discuss them. And when it comes to Winnequa Road, this is not when we do vote, or when the council does vote, it will not be a vote on the plan itself. It will be a vote on the funding, because obviously there very well could be more changes that come from the public information meeting in October. There will be more meetings because this is, I think, the typical meeting we have at 30%. Is that right? When the drawings are about 30% done, is my understanding anyway. There will be further meetings about the plan after that. It will also be considered at the Public Works meeting this coming Wednesday, and copies of the plan are in that meeting packet. So just so you all know. So I guess what we're going to do, we've had several amendments that we will just go through, and the sponsors can just explain what their thinking is, and if you have any questions, you can ask them. So the first one is an amendment from Alder Wood to pay for an electric vehicle charging station at Public Works for $15,000. Alder Wood?
Right, and since that time I was contacted by Dan Stefani, the Public Works Director, that because it's a hybrid and not full electric, that they would not need a charging station there, so I won't.
You withdraw that amendment?
Yeah.
All right, next amendment Also put forth by Alder Wood, an amendment to provide $30,000 for a polymer coating on the Bridge Road bridge deck to be funded from unspent 2020 capital funds.
Yeah, this was brought up by Director Stefani at the Committee of the Whole meeting about needing the bridge needing a polymer coating, and he was hoping that it would be funded from the unspent capital funds. And I think, as I recall, it had inquired at that time that if we needed to do something, and I think Mark would, staff would prefer to have us on record if that's going to be the source of funds.
Alder Thomas?
Is that really just a carryover?
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Sure. Mark, you want to come up? And Dan, if you have anything to add, let us know.
Very well, thank you.
Okay.
So this one, Dan has a budget this year for street maintenance repairs. He's not able to do this project because of the timing of it, so we have $30,000 left in that budget. So this is just carrying that money over from that one budget, which is the street maintenance account. So it's adding the $30,000 because he can't finish the project this year in time. So we need that moved over to 2022.
Dan, did you have anything to add, or?
Yes, when the bridge was resurfaced with the 2019 Bridge Road project, they typically recommend that you do the polymer overlay within 3 years of the new decking. So next year would be our 3-year period. So we'd like to get that polymer overlay installed next year, and it's also part of the bridge inspection program where not only did Strand write it in the manual for that, but also the bridge inspector, a completely separate party, also recommended it be done. So that's why we do want to get that done in 2022 so we can follow the DOT recommendations for that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have any questions for Dan? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next amendment, 2203, also put forth by Alder Wood, amendment to increase funding for the Fireman's Park bicycle pad and rack from $5,000 to $15,000. The source is GO bonds. Doug?
Right. At the Committee of the Whole, I'd asked the Parks Director if the $5,000 was adequate, and then he explained that it was, I think, there was more involved in it than the mayor thought at the time she was doing the budget. Anyway, to do the project as he's proposed, with the pad and the rack, you'd need $15,000 for it.
And Mr. Anderson, this is partly because it also involves a sidewalk, is that correct? Or some kind of a walkway?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, we'd have to do a curb cut off the access drive coming into the park, and a slight sidewalk to the Barry Johnson Memorial, and then off of there would be where the bike rack would be.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Jake or Doug? Okay, thank you, Jake. We'll move on to 2204, also put forth by Alder Wood. Amendment to reduce funding for the community center design plans for remodel from $50,000 to $15,000. Make it about 30% of that. Doug?
Right. And this is my last one for now anyway. Yeah, basically what I took away from that discussion, again, Committee of the Whole with Jake and with the Senior Center Director Diane Mickelwink, was it sort of dependent on when we're going to do the replacement of this building, of how much money it made sense to put into it now. And my sense was if we're really going to do it in an 8 or 9 year time frame, then we really wouldn't get the investment payback, because if we have, I think Jake had $900,000 in for the 23 budget plan. So, but if you've been over there, you know that there's some really urgent needs, especially in the senior center and the stairwell connecting the 2 floors. So basically, this is to allow part of the project to go forward, and kind of counting on Jake and Diane to work together to identify those specific things.
Jake or Diane, did you have anything to add?
Can I, Mayor?
Doesn't look like it.
Can I just as a point of clarification, first of all, just in terms of the record, this says library building envelope study on the amount, and it is a
There's
community
a typo
center.
there, Mark.
And then second, it seems to me that we're not talking about an envelope study. We're talking more about.
We're not. It's an incorrect title.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I don't think that there's any value in doing an envelope study on the community center.
No, and we aren't doing that.
And so this is really about addressing safety, addressing some safety and needs and the smaller items that Doug was referring to.
Correct. I have a feeling it was just a form that had been used before and the title was not changed accidentally. Diane or Jake, do you have anything to add? Diane?
I talked about this at the committee of the whole, but obviously, like Doug was mentioning, the stairwell being a safety issue is probably our number one priority in the building. But we can look and see with the change what we might be able to do in addition to that, with the amount, with the decreased amount of money.
Jake?
I think 15,000 might be a little light to do anything more than just the stairwell. I did try to contact our architect that did the study, and he's on vacation right now. So I will get a little bit better idea between the next meeting on what that number would be for a reduced scope. But my hunch is telling me 15,000 may be a little bit light to do much more than just modifying the stairwell. But I will get that before the next meeting for sure.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have any questions?
I just have another question about the. I'm on European time, so I watched all weekend. I spent watching meetings, city meetings, and so I saw that and looking at all the details of everything, and there was quite an extensive work, obviously, by the architects on this already, and I'm wondering where the funding from that came from, because I don't recall us approving as a council any kind of funding for even the work that the architects have done to date, and I'm just wondering where that came from.
I think that was part of last year's budget, wasn't it?
It was part of last year's
budget last year.
Okay, thank you. I didn't remember it from last year.
Yeah, 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Diane and Jake. Moving on. Number 5, to change the funding for the sidewalk portion of South Winnequa Road modification from general funding to TIF funding. This is within a half-mile boundary of the TIF, which is a requirement, I think, for TIF spending. And this is put forth by Alder Thomas.
So this is not to say that, to pay for the sidewalk. The notion is if the council decides to build the sidewalk, how do we pay for it? And we can put it on the tax roll, which means the taxpayers get to pay for it. I like to keep taxes down. I pay taxes too. So I think that's reasonable. It still bumps up pushes us up higher to the debt ceiling. And we're pretty close to we're not close, we're what, 10 million from the
28.
28
but that
million
doesn't
from
include the San Damiano, right?
Mark, do you want to address that?
The concern is it still adds to the debt ceiling, so it's not, we still get the money the same way, it's who pays it back. And if we put it on TIF, then it comes out of the TIF district and it doesn't come out of the taxpayers' back.
Anyone have any questions?
And it goes to Moiguera is, I believe, the limit that it goes to.
Yeah, the half mile.
Mayor?
Alder Groupie and then Alder Moore.
I believe Alder Moore was first.
Okay, Alder Moore.
I'm wondering if we can speak to several of the individuals' comments this evening in relation to TIF money being used in this way. I mean, I understand why the half-mile radius would be appropriate in most instances, but I'm just wondering how frequently it is used by communities and where that half-mile comes from. Does that come from the state statute or?
One of the comments I can remember hearing when the first sidewalk was first talked about, people will be walking down to the corridor, down to the triangle.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's what it's used for, then that's a legitimate excuse. When you put a development in, you need roadways, you need ways for people to get there for them to be successful.
Right.
Whether it's a sidewalk, whether it's a road, and it is done within the development, and it can be done